Today we're making a whitewashed sit-stand desk out of some pieces of poplar I had sitting around. I was lucky enough to score these really nice dual motor sit-stand legs for only $75 from a business that was closing. As you can see, they're really strong. Since they didn't come with the tabletop, I had to build one. I had enough poplar on hand, but I had to improvise because it was not all the same thickness. So I started by cutting this 2-inch slab of poplar to rough length, and then I ripped it in half. The final thickness of the tabletop is about 3/4 of an inch, so I was able to cut each of these in half. It took 2 passes of the table saw. This would have definitely been more efficient if I had a big bandsaw, but I obviously don't have one. After those were done, I started cutting the rest of the wood down to rough width. I wanted to do the final rips after I planed everything down to final thickness. As you can see here, the different pieces ranged from 1.5 inch to about an inch thick, so unfortunately I had a little bit of wood to plane down and some of the wood loss. For the planing, I started with the thickest boards and made my way down to get everything to about 3/4 of an inch. Then I laid everything out to see how I wanted the grain to flow. I marked all the sides so that I knew which sides mated with which. I'll link to a video where I explain this more, but essentially it helps to tighten your glue up if you don't have a joiner. Then I re-ripped both sides of the boards. I marked out where the biscuits were going to go and I started cutting them. Now I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant here. The biscuit joiner I bought is super cheap, and as a result it's not the highest quality. As you can see, I started having some trouble with the guide rail moving during cuts. This was really infuriating. I finally managed a workaround by using the tabletop as a guide for the cut, but this definitely resulted in more planing and sanding later. Bottom line here, if you can, always buy quality first. It'll save you money and hassle in the long run. I don't know why I didn't do it this time. Usually I do, but oh well. I also had some trouble during the glue up. It was really hot outside and the glue was drying way too fast. The biscuit joiner had also left a bunch of sawdust in the slots, so I had to scramble to get that out in the last minute. I clamped the first 2 boards together while I worked on the rest, since they were drying so fast, and then for the others I only glued one side of the 2 that were being glued together, and that was plenty. After wiping away excess glue, I filled some small cracks with some extra glue, and then I rubbed a ton of sawdust into the cracks in hopes that they would help with any small imperfections. Thankfully, between this and the stain I used, it turned out really great. The bottom of the table required a ton of cleanup, so I used a chisel to scrape off the excess glue, and then I used my hand plane to smooth things out a bit. The top also required some planing. Again, this is probably at least in part due to the biscuit issue, but at least it was really satisfying. I filled a couple small cracks with wood putty and then sanded them down later. Then I took it back to the table saw to rip it down to width. Craig sent me this AccuCut XL track saw kit to try out. It essentially turns your current circular saw into a track saw. I was pleasantly surprised with how easy it was to use. It doesn't require any clamps and can cut up to 100 inches in length. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to learn more about it. I sanded everything down to 220 grit. I used a whitewash stain to help gray out the wood and to mirror the white legs a little bit. After 2 coats, it looked really good. Finally, I used my finish sprayer to apply several coats of water-based poly. Okay, on to the legs. I assembled the base, which has a motor in each leg. You could buy similar legs from a retail outlet or online, or you can check Craigslist and see if you might be able to get a good deal like I got. Also, I should mention that the legs on this model and on the other SanDisk I have allow you to expand the middle so that you can make a much larger tabletop if you want to. I attached the top to the base with pocket hole screws and washers. The base came with these little rubber spacers which allow a little bit of play between the top and the table. Also, luckily the screw holes in the base had some play so that the pocket hole screws had room to move as the wood moves. I pre-drilled all the holes to reduce the chance of the wood splitting, and after attaching the controls and some cable management straps, I was done. I think this turned out really well. The subtle grayed out grain pairs really nicely with the white legs and the color palette in my house. As always, I ran into a couple of issues during the build, but you wouldn't even know looking at it now. In total, I think this probably cost about $150, including the legs. Anyway, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the thumbs up. I've got a couple larger builds that I'm working on right now, which have been dragging on a little bit, but I'm hoping to have them done soon. Alright, I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks again.